watching the Daily Roundup by People's Dispatch, where we bring you some of the top stories from around the world. Let's take a look at the headlines. Macron bypassed parliament to impose pension reforms, protests break out across France. Four people killed by occupation forces in West Bank, including a teenage child. Over 50,000 teachers walk out of jobs in a nationwide strike in New Zealand. Ecuadorian lawmakers formally call for impeachment against President Guillermo Lasso. Thousands took to the streets across France to protest President Emmanuel Macron's move to force through his controversial pension reforms. The protests broke out immediately after Macron's government bypassed parliamentary approval to implement the pension reforms on Thursday. The pension reform increases the retirement age from 62 to 64 and also stipulates a mandatory 43 years of service before one is entitled to a full pension or benefits. In response to the protests, the government has unleashed police repression to deal with the demonstrators. In Place de la Concorde in Paris, where over 6,000 demonstrators had gathered on Thursday, police arrested more than 217 people. As per reports, there were similar demonstrations in Rennes, Nantes, Lyon, and Marseille, where protesters clashed with riot police and vandalized bank fronts. On Thursday, the government invoked the emergency provision, Article 49.3 of the Constitution, in the parliament to pass the pension reform by passing the parliamentary vote. The decision announced by Prime Minister Elizabeth Borne to avoid voting provoked ire from opposition legislators in the parliament. Legislators of the left wing New Ecological and Social People's Union or NUPES held placards and booed the Prime Minister over the move. Opposition legislators are also expected to push for a no confidence vote in the coming days. While the parliamentary bloc that supports the pension reform has a clear majority in the Senate, the government was not confident about its support in the lower house. As per constitutional provisions, the bill will be considered validated unless the opposition files and passes a no confidence motion against the government in the parliament within 24 hours. That is by Friday evening after invoking Article 49.3. A no confidence motion, which is expected to be submitted on Friday, needs to be approved by more than half of the assembly. If it were to be successful, the government would have to resign. If the no confidence motion does not pass, the pension bill would be considered passed. The last no confidence motion to succeed was in 1962. In the meanwhile, progressive groups are expected to continue the resistance. Communist politician Fabian Roussel told reporters that the mobilization will continue. This reform must be suspended. Four Palestinians were killed, including a teenager, in a raid on Jenin in the occupied West Bank on Thursday. As per the Palestinian Ministry of Health, the large-scale incursion into Jenin by Israeli occupation forces also left over 23 Palestinians wounded, with at least 5 hospitalized with critical or serious injuries. The four killed included 16-year-old Omar Mohammad Awadin, as well as Yusuf Salah Barakat Shreem, Nidal Amin Zaidan Khazim, and Louis Khalil El Zugair. A video clip from the horrific raid showed occupation forces fatally shooting at one of the four killed. The video showed the man being wounded on the ground and unable to move or defend himself as one of the officers fired a bullet at the young man's head. The Israeli army acknowledged that security forces are currently operating in the Jenin refugee camp. With the spate of growing violence from illegal Israeli settlers and occupation forces and counter violence from resistance forces, tensions have been high in the region. Thursday's shootings bring the number of Palestinians killed by Israelis this year to at least 85, including 16 children. In the meanwhile, counterattacks from Palestinians have killed at least 13 Israelis this year. This makes it to the bloodiest first 3 months since the year 2000. Fears are growing that there could be a wider outbreak of violence when Passover, Easter, and Ramadan all overlap in April. In New Zealand, school teachers organized a nationwide strike on Thursday, calling for more resources and pay rises that account for inflation. The strikes were organized by the Post Primary Teachers Association, or PPTA, and the New Zealand Educational Institute, or NZEI, after failed talks with the Ministry of Education. As per the unions, over 50,000 teachers participated in the one-day strike, making it the largest mobilization of this year so far. More than 10,000 teachers and supporters held a march on Queen Street in Auckland. At least 2,000 rallied outside Parliament in Wellington. Meanwhile, similarly large rallies and marches were attended by thousands in Christchurch, Hamilton, Tauranga, Dunedin, and several other cities and downs. Teachers have rejected the government's proposed pay price package, arguing that it is well below the demands raised by them. The government proposed a hike of 6,000 New Zealand dollars or around 3,700 US dollars over 2 years for all teachers. It also suggested a one off additional payment of 1,300 New Zealand dollars or 800 US dollars for primary teachers and 15 more hours per term of classroom release time. These proposals, the unions argued, did not account for the high levels of inflation the country witnessed in the past few years. As per reports, food inflation spiraled to a whopping 12%, while overall inflation stood at a staggering 7.6% in 2022. Only secondary school principals have accepted the government's offer, which for them was a $4,000 pay rise, plus a further 3% hike at the end of this year and a $6,000 well being allowance. The strike is only the second time primary and secondary school teachers have walked off the job on the same day, and the first time kindergarten teachers have joined them. Ecuadorian lawmakers have formally requested for impeachment proceedings against President Guillermo Lasso on Thursday. The unprecedented request comes shortly after lawmakers backed a report holding Lasso responsible for the alleged corruption case known as the Great Godfather. The impeachment request was backed by 59 of the 137 members of the National Assembly. This is much higher than the constitutionally mandated benchmark of 46 members to initiate the process. Lawmakers from different political blocs and protesters also held a sit in outside the legislature to demand the start of the process. It is the first time that a sitting president is facing an impeachment request. The Constitutional Court must first ratify the admissibility of such a request within the next 6 days to be prosecuted and politically sanctioned. The vote of 92 legislators is required. Viviana Veloz, who presented the request, stated that the president was politically responsible for the crimes of extortion and embezzlement. The Great Godfather case is an alleged corruption network that made money by processing private company contracts with the state and high level position in the Lasso administration. As per revelations made by the new portal La Posta, criminal networks also laundered money through the links to drug trafficking and the Albanian mafia. And that's all for today's episode. For more such stories, keep following peoplesdispatch.org. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.